everyone. Happy Monday. Terry Talmadge and Mike Irwin for another edition of Ask Mike. Mike, what are we talking about a lot this week?
Well, we got a game.
That's exciting.
So we talk about a football game, and we got basketball. We had the last exhibition game, so it's the real stuff from here on out. So we got a lot of football and basketball questions, so it should be good.
It's kind of nice to have the bye week, though.
Yeah,
I will
it
say.
is. I got 3 days off. Did you?
Yeah, I did too.
So
it was very nice. I actually got to sit and watch football, like you talked about.
I did.
That you were going to get to do.
I went to the basketball game, so I missed some of those games on Saturday. But I got to watch Texas get beat.
Oh God,
that was great. I turned the sound down because I couldn't stand their dopey band. So I turned the sound down and I watched Texas lose, so it was really good.
So it was a win-win weekend for you.
Sure.
All right, let's get to our questions. We're going to start off with ATL Fan 5, who says, before the season started, Arkansas' schedule was rated the toughest in college football. I figured there were at least a couple of easier SEC games, like Mississippi State. After watching them dominate Kentucky, I'm thinking, this team just doesn't get a break, right?
Yeah, it sort of looks that way. Hey, there's always Missouri.
There's always Missouri.
They're not looking very good right now. Look,
only Vanderbilt.
Here's the thing. This really shouldn't be a surprise because Mike Leach has done this everywhere he's been. It may take him a year to get things going, but he usually comes up with a quarterback, and they've got a quarterback this year, Will Rogers, who's just getting better and better. I saw him against Alabama, and he was really good then, and I thought, oh my goodness. But he made a few mistakes, and Alabama's secondary is so good. They'll tear you up when you make mistakes. But man, he was, good grief, against Kentucky. He was 36 of 39.
Insane.
36 of 30, that's over 90% completion. And he just nickeled and dimed them to death. But the surprise, there was no surprise that they stopped Kentucky's running game because Mississippi State is like third in the SEC in run-stop defense. They're giving up like 89 yards a game on the ground. That's incredible. So I wasn't surprised that they stopped their running game, but the surprise was what they did to their quarterback. They intercepted that guy 3 times and then came up with a fumble, so there were 4 turnovers. And honestly, that's what decided the game, was those 4 turnovers. So they're pretty scary, but here's the thing. And this may make Arkansas fans feel a little better. First of all, that game was homecoming. It was at Starkville. If you've never been there,
those freaking
you have to understand that place is loud and
so
on homecoming, and they were really fired up. And I'm sure it disrupted what Kentucky was doing.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that their players were all fired up. Now, this game is in Fayetteville, so you're not going to have that. What has to happen is Arkansas fans need to be disrupted. Then you've got the fact that Arkansas had 2 weeks to get ready for this, and from what Sam Pittman said, they spent most of last week, the starters, just doing mental work, watching a lot of video, talking about how you deal with the, this offense and how to stop that. And then I think the good thing is most of those players probably sat and watched that whole game. If they didn't, there's something wrong with them. I'm figuring Sam Pittman said, you will watch this game.
You need to watch this,
And so there's no chance they will overlook these guys like Kentucky did, and Kentucky did. If you watch them, they look like they were clueless. They walked in there like, we're going to win this game. They were coming off a bye week too, but they were coming off a really emotional loss to Georgia. So they probably weren't really up for the game, and they just got their heads handed to them. I think Arkansas knows not to do that. So I think there's no way they'll overlook these guys now. So there's some good things about this. I don't think it's going to be a shoe-in, but I like Arkansas's chances.
Yeah, I got to say, watching that game, I was really surprised by Mississippi State's defense. I was just completely unaware of how well they were going to play.
I knew, again, their run-stop defense is good. What shocked me was how all the pass interceptions.
Yeah, Will Rogers had as many incompletions as Will Levis had interceptions.
It was incredible.
All right, Lanny says, I heard you say that Kentucky's cornerbacks played MSU's wideouts way too soft. They were getting 7 and 8 yards on those quick out passes almost every time. I agree. Surely Barry Odom won't do that.
Well, they made a mistake. I'm talking about Kentucky in that they really went after the quarterback. And that's not how you do a Mike Leach team, because his quarterbacks just get rid of the ball. They take a snap, throw right, throw left, maybe throw over the middle if he's got time. You've got to come up and really challenge those wideouts right on the line of scrimmage. You need to hit them right after they catch the ball. Can't have pass interference, but smack them right when they catch the ball, and you can drop them. if you give them some pad, his receivers are generally former high school running backs with good, quick movements.
Yeah.
And you saw in that game, they catch the ball and there's too much pad there, and then they just maneuver around those cornerbacks. Same thing with the linebackers. It really puts a lot of pressure on them, so you got to be very aggressive, and they weren't aggressive. So I think Arkansas knows to do that. Barry Odom had a good game plan last year against these guys, but it is different. They're better. But I do think Arkansas won't give them that pad. I don't think they're going to sit there and try to sell out trying to sack the quarterback, because they sacked him 3 times, Will Rogers, but so what? He just gets back up and gets a first down on the next play.
Didn't rattle him at all.
So again, I feel like Arkansas will do a much better job, their defense, than Kentucky did, because I think they'll be ready for this game.
Right.
And I don't think Kentucky was.
Exactly, and I'm sure Barry Odom, like you mentioned, was watching that game and,
Well,
and figuring out
Kentucky
how he
didn't
wants
play
to do it
them
differently.
last year, you know. Arkansas did. There's just some carryover there.
Yeah. All right. Big Daddy has the next question from Hogville and says, I know you're a Mike Leach fan. He's got the run and shoot running the way he wants it. Will Rogers is looking like a first-team SEC quarterback. Plus, they're playing that Joe Lee minnow bucket defense. You're going to have to explain that one to me. Looks like the Hogs have their work cut out for them. What do you think?
Again, he's right about that. He's right about Leach, and I already explained the quarterback thing. And I still feel like Arkansas has got a good chance to win. I'm not saying they for certain will win it, but I feel good about their situation. I want to address the part where you said I'm a Mike Leach fan, because people have brought that up before, and I get these nasty little one-on-one messages on Twitter from people, and they're Razorback fans, and they've somehow got it in their head that I wanted Mike Leach hired instead of Sam Pittman, which is incorrect. What I pointed out, and I told the whole story of how this happened, was that Alyssa knows Hal Mummy, and she and I went down to Starkville, and he told us, he was on a recruiting visit or whatever, and we had dinner together, and he told us that Leach was very, very interested in the Arkansas job, that he'd always liked.
He always kind of wanted it.
He likes Arkansas's fans. He liked their crowd, and he really was looking to get out of Washington State. So I knew that. So when Bielema got fired, we just double-checked to make sure, and the word we got, hey, he's ready to come if they'll talk to him and make him an offer. So I just passed that along to somebody in the athletic department. I didn't say hire him or anything like that. I said, hey, I heard he's interested.
Yeah.
We found out later on they didn't even talk to him.
Nope.
So that made him mad. So the next time that job opened up, which was after Morris got fired, we kind of checked again, or Alyssa did, and the word we got this time was, he would still come, but it's going to take some money this time. And they did talk to him that time, and Juracek was turned off by the fact that he wanted like $4 million or $4.5 million or whatever, so he didn't get the job. Now, it's got nothing to do with Pittman.
Right.
I think Pittman was the best hire. I think he's a better fit here than Mike Leach.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I don't like Mike Leach. I do like him, and liking him doesn't have anything to do with Arkansas. It has to do with the fact that I grew up in Lubbock. I was a Texas Tech fan. I always hated their coaches. They just hired dumb coach after dumb coach after dumb coach. Their ADs were stupid. The whole place was a mess. Finally, somebody hires Mike Leach. He takes him to a bowl game every year that he's there, which was like a decade. And I'm thinking, okay, this is terrific. And what do? They fire him because they're stupid there. So I've always liked him because of that. I hope he's successful, except when he plays Arkansas.
Right. And honestly, when you're talking about how I think we were all pretty much on the Mike Leach train when we were talking about the coaching search, because at the same time, Sam Pittman was kind of out of the blue.
He wasn't even
in the conversation until all of a sudden he got the job.
And what were we all saying? Wow, after sitting there watching Chad Morris go, for 2 years, his press conferences, he had one every Monday during football season. It was like going to the dentist where they clean your teeth. You're just going, I don't want to do that again. You'd have to sit there and listen to him, and he'd have notes, and he'd be talking to that blindside kid, whatever his name was.
Oh, gosh.
The real
You're talking about
guy.
Tui.
Yeah, Tui. He'd sit over there, and he'd watch him, and you could tell and he was reading notes and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what is this? So the idea that you'd get Leach and he'd come in and talk about Halloween candy and stuff like that, We were
idea.
kind of pumped up about that.
Yeah.
But none of us ever seriously believed that anybody would listen to us
True.
over at the Broyle Center. They're not going to go, what does Tara think? Let's call her.
Let's go do
No,
that.
That doesn't happen.
That
So
would
I just wanted to
be
clear up that confusion.
All right, Blood Red Hog has our next question and says, MSU beats Kentucky, Auburn beats Ole Miss. Assuming Alabama wins out, who do you think finishes second in the West?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to assume that Alabama is going to win out. Let's take a look. I've got a graphic here, and let's take a look at it. This is how tight it is. Now look at that. Alabama's 4-1, Auburn's 3-1. If they both win out to the Iron Bowl, then the winner of the Iron Bowl wins the SEC West. So I'm not prepared to say that it won't be Alabama that finishes second in the West.
Right.
It could. Now, let's say Alabama does win out. Okay, that means Auburn will end up with 2 losses. All of these teams still have tough games to play. So you could end up with maybe a 3-way tie involving Auburn, Ole Miss, and A&M, or Auburn, Ole Miss, and even Mississippi State. It really is fluid right now about who finishes second.
Yeah.
If you had to ask me right now, I think Auburn is probably the second best team in the West. They have really been impressive. It's one of those things where you kind of overlook them at the start of the season. Then the further you get into the season, you really start looking at them. I mean, who was the hottest team except Alabama? And Alabama's not all that hot this year, but who was the team everybody was talking about going into last weekend? It was Ole Miss.
Yeah.
There was even some talk, hey, that's a top 10 team. They might sneak into the national championship thing, blah, 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 blah. Well, now we know that's not true.
Right.
And when Auburn, and let me tell you this, because I watched that game, Auburn got a kind of a nice early lead, and they just sat on it. That game wasn't as close as the score indicates.
Yeah.
They really dominated Ole Miss. I mean, Lane Kiffin was over there just doing that Lane Kiffin praying and looking stupid and all that stuff.
Your tweets.
I was impressed with Auburn. And if you had to ask me right now, I'd say they will probably finish second, but they might win it.
And I got to say, I mean, watching that with Auburn and how they've done so far this season, it makes you feel a little bit better about Arkansas losing to them.
Absolutely.
A little bit.
I mean, if you think
Still
about
think they
it,
should have won that
people
game
were
a
complaining
little
about
bit.
losing to Ole Miss. Well, you lose to Ole Miss on a 2-point missed 2-point conversion. You if that's good, you beat them. So this is not like Ole Miss just took a paddle out and paddled Arkansas, and that was at Oxford. So then you look at that Auburn game, and we now know Auburn is pretty good, and they got some breaks in that game that really changed the course of the game. The fumble that was a fumble that was ruled not a fumble, that was huge. Perotti losing the ball in the sun, which caused a whole series of things to happen, which ended up giving Auburn a touchdown. So Arkansas could have easily won that game. So,
Like who was the question earlier? Said Arkansas can't catch a break? That's pretty much it. Yeah.
so far, that is true. They're due some for sure.
All right. TL Slayton on Facebook says, looks like Kiffin blew the Auburn game by going for it on 4th down with 5 minutes to go. Seems like a chip shot field goal was a better choice. That man is just stubborn.
You know, that was my initial reaction when I saw that. I was just laughing. I'm thinking, this guy, what's wrong with him? But then I started thinking about it later on, and here's the deal. Put yourself in his position.
Okay.
And just take Lane Kiffin out of the equation. You're
Got
anybody. Okay, what do you have to do if you kick that field goal? I think there was 5 minutes left to go in the game. You're down by 11 points. So if you kick the field goal, you still got to get the ball back. And then in 5 minutes, you have to score. You have to make the 2-point conversion, and then you would have to win in overtime. So that's a pretty tall order. Either way, the odds against you are pretty good. I'm thinking what he was thinking is, if we go ahead and score right here, that kind of gives us some momentum, shifts the momentum in the game.
A little bit.
Then we can come back and kick the field goal, and then we're looking pretty good in overtime. So I think that was what he was thinking. He took a risk. To me, that's not really any different than Sam Pittman deciding to go for the 2-point conversion, which he could have just played for overtime.
Yep.
So, you know, I'm not a Widow Wayne Kiffin fan. But I'm going to give him a pass on that.
Okay.
Even though I really ragged him on Twitter when it happened, I thought about it and I thought, nah, that wasn't a bad decision.
Yeah, you make good points about that whole situation. Mousetown on Twitter says, Ole Miss and Auburn both had players go down with fake injuries. A dead giveaway is when a player gets up limping and by the time he gets to the sideline, he looks okay. Why is it always a leg cramp? Are those easier to fake? And was Auburn giving Ole Miss a taste of its own medicine?
Yeah, they are easier to fake.
Yeah.
Because if you've ever had a cramp in an athletic competition, I have a million years ago, what happens is your leg just tightens up and it hurts, really hurts. And you can usually tell when somebody really has a leg cramp because it's painful, and you can tell by the look on their face. And that's why you can tell some of these are fake. They just fall down and they're sitting there looking.
Oh no.
And somebody's rubbing their leg and stuff, and they're just sitting there. You know, if you've got a leg cramp, you're in pain. But it's easy to fake because of this, because it can go away very quickly. If they go over and work on you, sometimes you still got to have an IV, or if it's a really bad cramp, if it's a real one that's serious due to dehydration. But a lot of times they can just work on you a little bit and it goes away. But again, the dead giveaway to me is you get up and then you're limping and and then by the time you get to the sidelines, it's like nobody's looking, right? I'll just walk.
Yeah.
So now, what about somebody actually going, you know what? I think we're going to do that to you. You know, that's a great idea. I have no idea what was really going on in that game.
Yeah.
But I think now it would be great if every team that plays Ole Miss from here on out does fake injuries.
Yeah.
Because what it would do is send a message to the SEC office. We're tired of this.
Yeah.
So if you're going to let them do it, we're going to do it.
I'm honestly surprised that hasn't happened yet, or that maybe it has been done behind closed doors and we just don't know about it.
Maybe.
But I would assume that coaches have got to be frustrated by it, especially when it's so blatantly obvious.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Arky1967 has a question from last week that we actually didn't get time to include it. And he wants to know, why do we not have post-game press conferences with referees like we do coaches? Then they would have the opportunity to explain the controversial calls they made during the game. I assume they don't want to explain it.
Well, this question comes up from time to time. It's been asked before, and I've heard fans talk about it. It's never going to happen. First of all, it's not going to happen because they don't want referees talking about anything.
Right.
You know, what you will get sometimes, if it's a real controversy, is you'll get some statement by the conference office where they talk to the head referee and he allegedly makes some statement. I don't even think I think they just make one up.
Yep.
He signs off on it, and they pass that along as an explanation, like that deal last year on the lack of continuous football action on the backward pass that wasn't ruled a fumble. So the best you're going to get is some manufactured statement that allegedly comes from a referee about something, which probably isn't really the thing he said. They probably just said, hey, we're going to say that you said this, and he goes, okay, and they say it. They're not going to put them in a real press conference because they're not used to that.
Yeah.
Coaches are used to press conferences. If you've never been in I would like to take the average fan.
And put them in a press conference?
Remember that show Coach that's still on TV at times? And Luther Van Dam, his dopey assistant defensive coordinator, he was complaining because he never got enough attention, blah, blah, blah. So one day Hayden stuck him in the post-game press conference after they lost a game. And you go in there and explain.
Right.
And he was like, no,
all over the place, yeah.
So going into a press conference to try and explain a controversy is pretty tough.
Yeah.
And so if they stuck some of these referees in there, there's no telling what they would end up saying. So that's never going to happen.
It'd probably just be like digging a bigger hole,
Digging
honestly.
a bigger hole, exactly. That's why they won't do it.
All right. Rob's 4516 says, I've always wondered if any interesting comments get made between coaches during the after-game handshake. Do you have any good stories about that? Yeah, that's awesome. I get curious about that too sometimes.
You know, I've never been the guy. I do a lot of shooting. I started off years ago. I mean, when I first got in, I was working at a small TV station where if you're in sports, you're usually the only guy and you got to shoot yourself. So I learned how to shoot a long time ago, and I've always been willing to shoot if somebody wants me to or if I need to, even though I'm an on-air guy. But I've never been the guy that runs out onto the field at the end of the game. I've never ever done that. Where you've got a camera and you're right there.
And you got to book it to midfield.
You got to move out there. So I don't have any good stories about actually being there and hearing something or whatever. But there are a couple that I remember.
Okay.
And the first one I remember is from, and I don't remember if it was Frank Broyles' Cotton Bowl year of '75, which was the first team I covered, or the next year, which was his last year when he finished 5-5-1. It was one of those 2 years, and they were playing Baylor. And Arkansas had Steve Little, who was a really good kicker. He's a great field goal kicker, could punt. He was tremendous on kickoffs. And Frank had said many times, he's a weapon. I mean, Steve Little was a good quarterback and always wanted a chance to play some quarterback, and Frank wouldn't let him because he said, I can't take a chance on you getting hurt.
That's a good point.
So, you know, Frank was really protective of Steve Little. Well, Baylor had this defensive end named Ronnie Lee. He was about 6'5", weighed about 260, 270. He was really fast. And they line up to receive the kickoff. And you've got that line, I think it's the 40-yard line, that you're supposed to stay behind until the ball is kicked, and then you can block anybody you want on the kickoff team because you're receiving it. And usually the guys across the front will peel around and then set up blocks kind of in a semicircle. But you theoretically block anybody you want, including the kicker. But Ronnie Lee intentionally ran over that. As Steve Little was approaching the ball, Ronnie Lee ran over that 40-yard line and ran right at him full speed, and in midair, right just as he kicked the ball with his foot still up, Ronnie Lee ran over him at full speed, blindsided him. He didn't even know it was coming, knocked him out. He had to go to the hospital. Ooh. He did not wake up, regain consciousness until he was in the hospital.
Wow.
It was one of the dirtiest plays I've ever seen in my life.
Sounds like it.
And it was obvious what he was doing. They were trying to take him out. Baylor had a reputation of doing that kind of thing, but that was the worst I'd ever seen. And when the game was over, I wasn't out there, but I was standing close enough to where I could hear Frank yelling. And Frank was usually a pretty calm guy. That's the only time where I thought he might just beat Grant Taff up. I mean, he was that mad. He was screaming.
And understandably.
Yeah. I don't know what they said. I can't remember what was said, but I had the impression that Frank was about that far away from just slugging him.
There were some words.
He was mad. The other one I remember is when Danny Ford was still at Clemson. And this was the year, I think, where when the season was over, there were all these recruiting violations, and they got put on probation, and Danny Ford got fired. So he knew that was sort of going on that year. They played North Carolina State. North Carolina State's head coach was Monty Kiffin, Lane Kiffin's dad, and Monty had been the defensive coordinator at Arkansas under Lou Holtz, so I knew him. I did not know Danny Ford at the time. These are two really big guys. They go 6'3", 6'4", 230, 240.
Yeah, big
They're
dudes.
big physical guys. They're out there. Clemson beats North Carolina State rather badly, so you think, you know, Danny's just going to go out there and go, yeah, and walk off. We won, we beat you, whatever. I think he totally surprised Kiffin because Kiffin gets out there and kind of puts his hand out, and Danny Ford just goes off on him, starts threatening to whip him, beat him up. You turned us in. You're trying to get us in trouble. You lied, blah, blah, blah. Kiffin, and this was on television. Whoever was out there shooting that, it was all over the place, so you could watch it. And Kiffin, I genuinely believe, knowing him and knowing the way he reacted, he didn't know what he was talking about. He kept saying, look, I don't know what you're talking about. We didn't turn you in. And Danny just kept like, I'm going to beat you up. I mean, it was like, I thought they were going to have a fight. So a few years later, when Danny became Arkansas's head coach, and he was, by the way, a really funny guy, fun to be around, as fun as anybody I've ever been around. He was hilarious. But one day we were sitting around his office, and I asked him about that. He just started laughing. He said, no big deal.
Just brushed it off?
Yeah, he just brushed it off like it wasn't any big deal.
Jeez.
So it was pretty funny. But those are two things that I remember about the handshake, which is usually nothing. Yeah, good game, coach. Yeah, good game. It's usually pretty boring.
I mean, I feel like the only one I can really remember is it's not for football. It was Dave Van Horn and Tony Vitello.
That was a big one.
All right, we have one more question from Blood Red Hog, Mike, and he is asking again. He says, an 8-point victory over North Texas after a 3-point scare over East Central. I know Coach Musselman has a lot of new faces, but is your anxiety level rising a bit? Could this be a rebuilding year for the Hogs? No.
You know what? I mean, if you want to use the term rebuilding, they are rebuilding because they lost a lot of guys.
Right, but that just has like a different tone to it.
They're rebuilding with some really good players.
Right.
So why are they not just kicking butt in these two games?
Yeah.
To me, it's pretty obvious, and I think it's the same problem that Calipari has when he brings in all these 5-stars every year. You've got to have a period early in the season where these guys learn to play with each other.
Right.
They're not used to playing together in different combinations. Look, that game against North Texas, I went to the game. Their defense was outstanding. North Texas came in as a good 3-point shooting team, and Arkansas held them to what, single digits shooting
Yeah, I think
percent?
it was like 3 or 4 or something from behind the arc.
Or maybe it was 11%, something. They really shut them down from 3-point range. They got out-rebounded, I think, a little bit, but if you consider that Jalen Williams had back spasms and didn't play in that game, and Connor Vanover, for whatever reason, they didn't use him much, Arkansas didn't have a true big in that game and still did okay on the boards. The only problem I saw, and you didn't notice it in the first half because everybody was hitting their shots, and that's when they got the big 20-point lead or whatever. It looked like it was going to be a blowout. But in the second half, they started missing those shots, and that's when you begin to see, hey, there's no real flow to the offense.
Right.
Point guards just dribbling the ball down there and shooting it, or if he passes it one time, then that guy is going to shoot. And there was no real movement or flow to the offense. And Musselman talked about that when the game was over, and he said that's the big problem we have. And he said we've got potentially 4 guys that are going to be point guards. Chris Likes, the transfer out of Miami, he's going to be, it's Likes,
It's
right?
Likes.
Yeah, Likes. He's going to be the point guard, the main point guard. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah,
He's a little
what it
short
looks
guy,
like.
but he's really quick. And I think he's got good point guard skills. I just think right now he's a little lost because he's trying to figure out what everybody else is doing,
Right.
how are they going to move. You know, you got to anticipate a lot when you're a point guard, and that means you got to understand your teammates.
Yeah.
And he talked about it after the game. He said, we may not be in top form with our offense in the way it should move until later in the season. And he may be talking about conference play. But he says, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Now, that may upset some fans. They may lose 2 or 3 games in December, in late November, December. I don't know. But I wouldn't worry too much about it because I do think there's real talent on this team. They've had some injuries. Not everybody's been out there.
Right.
So,
and that's played a big role.
Again, it's going to take a while. But to me, and I said this yesterday when we did our Pig Trail show, you can always tell if Musselman's really worried because he does weird stuff when he's mad.
He's a little emotional.
He thinks it's like he's going to crawl under the desk or something. His head goes down real low and he's kind of looking up and he's not talking and he's kind of.
He'll put his hand on his head.
Yeah, he's covering his face and everything, and you can tell if he's upset. He was fine
He's
yesterday.
okay.
He was okay.
Yes.
No problem with the press conference. So if he's not upset, neither am I, because he knows what he's doing.
It's a good sign. And I mean, he always said, actually, like, they don't even have to be doing these exhibition games in front of people. They could do it behind closed doors and avoid all of this talk that we're having right now. But he doesn't want to do that. He wants them to be in front of
fans and see how they perform, and that's part of it.
Yeah.
So I think
it's a process.
I think they'll be okay.
They're
I'm not
getting there.
concerned right now.
And hey, North Texas is not a bad team either.
Yep.
Or at least they weren't last year. We'll see how they turn out this year. But, all right, Dr. Strange Pork wants to know, wants a change made on the floor of Bud Walton Arena. He says, they have the floor at Bud Walton looking like some European athletic club floor. You mean to tell me with all the tones, colors, etc., that they couldn't put the Slobber Hog center court? That's actually
I don't know
funny.
about the European thing.
Yeah,
I never thought about that. But look, I'm a Slobber Hog fan. I've talked about it before. The reason a lot of fans like Slobber Hog connected with basketball is because that's what was on the floor when Nolan had all those good teams. And they do have a Slobber Hog presence. They've got a Slobber Hog fan that the Spirit Squad runs around waving at, in timeouts and before and after the games. So that's good. If you look where it says Nolan Richardson Court, there's a Slobber Hog right next to each of those logos.
Okay.
So that's good.
So it's on there.
The issue is the big one.
Yeah.
And I was trying to remember, and I've never found out that I was going to ask somebody, and they haven't gotten back to me as we taped the show. That logo was changed at some point. Now, I don't know if it was changed when Nolan was fired. I don't know if it happened before then. I don't know if it was a Jeff Long thing. I seem to remember somebody telling me that Long thought that the Slobber Hog was too cartoonish. It looked like too much like a cartoon. And he liked the running modern hog. So that could be correct, that he put it on there for that reason. Another person told me one time that they wanted a unified look between the football field and the basketball floor. So you have the modern running Razorback on the football field, in the middle of the football field, so you put it at Bud Walton Arena for continuity's sake. I want the Slobber Hog back there.
I do too.
I
love that logo.
Because it's identified with basketball
Absolutely.
here. So I would love for the Slobber Hog to be the official basketball Razorback logo.
That would be really cool.
So we're going to continue to push for it. And just like when I talked about hiring coaches, that
we're going to go over
they
there.
will not listen to us, and it won't have any effect whatsoever.
It's worth a shot,
But
Mike.
we'll try to fire the fans up, and maybe they can get all bent out of shape and cause a change. I don't know.
I love it. All right, back to football, though, for another question. 10 Years of Hell asks, when Texas and Oklahoma come into the SEC, what are your thoughts on divisions/pods? I like the idea of Bama and Auburn not being in the Hogs division, but if they use the pod system and we have Texas and Oklahoma and A&M in there, that's a tough pod to be in. And it would be.
We've been asked this before, and I don't. Look, there's no way to know how they would do the pods. Now, you assume a pod would be a 4-pod thing with 4 teams each for the 16 teams. If you do that, and I think I got a graphic that will show this, this is what I've said before I think would happen, and it makes sense. And I'm talking about the pods in terms of them being done geographically, grouping teams closer together so that you don't have to travel as far. If you're a fan of one team, you don't have to go all the way over the other side of the conference for somebody in your pod. Keep in mind, these would be the teams that you played every single year. Yeah. So to me, you'd call what Arkansas is in the SEC Northwest, and it would be Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss. So Texas is not in there, A&M's not in there, whatever. And then Texas would be in the Southwest with A&M, LSU, and Mississippi State. Now, here's the thing. If you have a 4-pod system, you're only playing 3 games with against those teams. So that means you got to play 5 crossover games. So you're still going to get some travel.
Right.
And for instance, I think I looked it up. Think about Texas playing South Carolina.
Yeah,
that's over 1,000 miles. And I guess they're used to it because West Virginia's in the Big 12 and they've had to make that trip. But that's a similar type all the way across from one edge of the conference to the other. So that's still going to happen with your crossover games. But that won't happen every year. They will keep revolving the crossover games to a point where every 2 years or whatever, you end up playing everybody. But you would get Alabama off your schedule at least some years.
Yeah, I don't think anyone will
So I don't think fans would complain
that would be
about
nice.
that too much.
And I like that pod that you put together. I think that's probably pretty accurate if they do a 4-game pod.
You
Missouri,
could travel
Oklahoma,
with that
Ole
one
Miss.
pretty good.
Right.
OU would be easy to get to. Missouri's not that far away. And Ole Miss is the closest team as you're going toward the east side of the conference.
And I think they definitely put Texas and Texas A&M, obviously, in the same
No, they'd
pod.
be together. And LSU's got that rivalry with A&M, so Texas would be another logical thing. Mississippi State's the one that wouldn't want to be in that pod.
Right.
That would be tough.
All right. One more question for you, Mike. It is Alex Forhog 88. Wouldn't be asked Mike without this question, honestly.
He's the guy that always asks this question.
I love it. He wants to know, what's your favorite memory that involves Mississippi State, and what is your favorite win against the Bulldogs?
The favorite win would have to be
last
last year.
Yeah.
Because of why? Because it broke that, 19-game SEC losing streak. I think it was 19 games. It was all of Chad Morris's 16 losses plus the last 3 under Bielema. So it was 19, I think, and it broke that streak. So that was
a big win.
It was Sam Pittman's first conference win here.
Yeah.
So that was a good one. My favorite memory has nothing to do with football, and it really doesn't even have to do with a basketball game. But again, I mentioned Alyssa and I were down there several years ago to cover a basketball game, and she knows Hal Mummy really well from when he was coaching in Abilene, and she was there. So he was in town in Starkville recruiting some high school kid for a Division II team where he was coaching. So he called her on the phone. She got the phone call in his car when we were driving, and he said, "Hey, I'll buy you guys dinner." So he bought us dinner the night before the basketball game at San. Believe me, there was a nice restaurant in Starkville. People say there's not one. I don't remember the name of this place, but it was expensive and it was nice. And he bought us dinner, and that was really good. So we go back to the hotel. She talks for about 15 minutes and goes up to her room. She doesn't want to listen to all this yabber yabber football
Yeah.
talk. Hal Mummy and I sat there till midnight in the lobby of this hotel talking about football, coaches he knew, coaches I knew, stories here, stories there. And then we started talking about Leach and the connection he has with pirates and why he likes pirates, and he's a big, he likes stories about Indians and Geronimo and all this stuff. He wrote a book about
He's an
Geronimo.
interesting dude.
So then I started talking about, I've always been like any kid that my age that grew up in Texas. There was this Walt Disney Davy Crockett movie when we were kids, and everybody went to see it, and then we all became Davy Crockett fans, and they had all this stuff, and you could buy the official coonskin hat and the old Betsy rifle and all this stuff. So I was telling him, yeah, I did all that stuff. And he said, I grew up in San Antonio. I got to go to the Alamo every day that I wanted to. And I'm like, I was so jealous of him. I've been there like 2 times in my whole life. And he's like going every day. So we talked about that. So I want to show this picture because when I got back home, he sent me this picture. That's Hal Mummy.
That's fantastic.
He's behind what's called the Long Barrack, which is off to the right of the church. And he's pointing toward the north where the original attack came.
Right.
And he's saying, here they come.
Oh my
And he's dressed up like Davy Crockett.
With the hat and everything.
Everything. He's even got the buckskin. I don't know if he was really wearing a buckskin, the real Davy Crockett was, but he's wearing it. And he is pointing in the right direction. He knows his Battle of the Alamo because that's the direction where the original attack came on the last day.
So can we get you one of those hats?
Yeah, I wish I had one.
You want one?
I don't know that I would go there.
Would you do it?
I don't know. Maybe.
All right. We'll have to see if we can get you down to San Antonio at some point and recreate that photo.
That's right.
That'd be great. All right, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Ask Mike, everyone. Thanks so much for your questions. We'll see you back here next Monday.